Okay, good morning everyone. As Rowan mentioned, my name is Manuel. I'm based in Madrid, in Spain. I'm working for the Laval International as a system configuration specialist and product specialist for Ship and Go Parlor. I've been working with the Laval for 5 years, and when I knew about this conference and the topic that we should present, I was thinking what to tell to them, what should be quite interested on something that probably is not easy or is not easy to find on publication or information. So this is more or less my vision after 5 years working in the Laval and 9 years previously working outside the Laval in sheep and goat farming. What should be important to take into account when it comes to farm design, farm planning, and also when it comes to milking configuration and milking systems. So directly to the point, we have dairy sheep farm, and there are some important points that I would like to stress during this presentation, quite briefly. The first one is that sheep milk farming is not cow farming. It's completely different. There are some similarities, they share some similarities, but this is the first point that we have to realize. This is it's a complete different way of working, approaching, and planning. But at the same time, sheep dairy farming, and goat dairy farming is completely different. So we shouldn't use what it is valid for goats, for sheep as it is. We have to analyze, we have to investigate, and we have to then apply what is used in one species for the other one, and vice versa. It's not the same. This is quite important. The second point, which I believe is really, really, really important to always have in mind, is that we are talking about milk. It is about milk. So what does it mean? That lamb or meat production or wool, whatever, should never be priority number one. So all decision or planning when it comes to breed, genetics, feeding, farming, housing, milking, should be based on the scope that it's milk. We are dairy sheep farming is dairy milk. The third important point from my experience is the farm system. There are different farm systems you will see on internet, literature, books, country, even in small or big countries, there are totally different way of farming. The important point when you start or when you are in or when you get this information from everyone is to analyze the system, because all the components around the farming depends on each other. So they are linked and there is a reason. And it's always good to understand the reason before taking that part of that system, that design, and apply in our system, in our farm, in our country, because that is always important. And everything depends on the objective, the scope of the final production. If I'm going to produce milk to produce cheese, what type of cheese, seasonalities, milk powder, yogurt, or whatever. There should be always a scope, and based on that, the system should be aligned and fit what we are looking for. Yes. On that sense, we have a farm, a system, which could be different system, pasture-based, intensive, indoor, outdoor, semi-extensive, whatever. It doesn't matter. We have different points that affect our design, our planning, our scope. Breeding, feeding, rearing, housing, milking. There are more, but I just put the main one here. But at the end, are related to the labor. We need to also take into account the labor. The labor affects all these points. But the important point is we have to understand all this system. We have to realize why we took or we are going to take this decision, why has been done on that way, because we have to adapt it to the final production system, and also we have to take into account the specific market or country request or requirement, which is quite important. A very simple example Roquefort is quite close to Spain. They collaborate a little bit, but they are totally different systems. And also within France and within Spain, you go to the south of the north, and it's completely different system. There is a reason behind that. It's production, breeds, whatever, but there is not possible to take for granted that one system will work in a different place or not. And that is important to notice. For example, the breeding system, this is a normal or a traditional one, is one lactation per year. We have a lactation period, then we have a dry-off period, which could be 4 months, 5, 6, depending of lactation. And then next year we have another one. This is the normal or the traditional milking system, breeding system in Roquefort area. Has been changed a little bit during the last year, but also could be seen here in other places. But then we have a different one. It's 2 lactation per year. Why to have it? Well, the reason is because more and more farmers, they do not want to have a big gap here, and they need, based on requirement from the markets, that they want to get this milk in order to supply and produce the product and to be available on the shelf on the supermarket throughout the year with the same quality. So now it's turning in a different way. You need to probably have 2 lambing seasons per year or not. There another one, could be 4 lambing seasons per year. Could be more, not intensive, but on big farms, on a scale farm. And then you could go up, down, wherever you want. Then the maximum milk breeding season today that I know is 52 breeding groups per year. So every week there is 200 sheep breeding like this. It's like a pork farm. This is, maybe it's on the top, on the stream, but this just to know that the range could be from 1 to 52 or maybe even more. But why? There is a reason why to go from one system to the other one. This system is not about produce more milk, to have big number of animals. The reason why is more and more this system possible on big farm is just to have the same amount of milk throughout the year with the same quality, with the same component, in order to fit the dairy industry requirement. The dairy industry has a capacity, and they cannot receive 120 or 20 extra % of milk during some months, or 80. Is not working like this. So they need to fill their capacity. They have to ensure that they will receive all milk and the needed milk during all the year with the same quality in order to produce the same product, to sell it, to have it on the shelf, and to supply the market. That is the reason, because what is asked is to have the same quality, the same amount of milk during all year around. The feeding system. There are different feeding systems. The reason to select one or another one, there are many reasons, but linked to the previous one, now more and more is used TMR or concentrate plus forage. Why? Because, as you know, the feeding content is affecting the milk composition. They don't want to have a big fat at the end of lactation or during summer, and lower fat at the beginning, or the same with protein. They want to have the same amount. They want to keep a stable product. And this is why this type of feeding is important. So based on what you need, what is required by the industry, or at the end, how will be your end product, you should decide what type of feeding system. Of course, there are labor costs, there are feeding costs that should be taken into account, but the main reason is not the cost to select this, is the product that I need. If I have pasture, I will have good, better probably profile of fat chains, and then there will be some fluctuation. Maybe that is what my market is asking for. It's perfect. Maybe if it is not, I need to change or not. This is something that you have to evaluate. You have to take into account when when you select this system. Reading, artificial, natural reading, it depends. This is from Roquefort. In Roquefort, they need to have the lamps with the mother during the first 30 days, is the law, in order to produce a Roquefort cheese. Then there is another option to do it in outside, with keep the lamp with the female during some period of time, or going directly to the artificial reading from the day 0 hours. Depends on what? In this case, it depends mainly on labor force, because this is more complicated. You need more labor force, but as it was presented before, you will have more sellable milk at the end of the day or at the end of the month. If you don't have labor force, to do this is quite complicated. Then, if you have labor force, you cannot hire, you need, as you know, during the lambing period, which could be 1 month, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you need people. You cannot hire people for 1 month and all the rest year you cannot hire it. So you have to go with this probably due to different reasons, but at the end you need to have lambing every regular period in order to keep the people at the farm. So you have to go probably from 1 or 2 lambing seasons to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So everything is linked, is related. Housing. The housing, in this case, probably many years ago, or when it comes to family farm or a small farm, is more related to the weather condition, but it's not anymore like that. Why to go for indoor or outdoor or hybrid? It's due to the request from the market. If my market, my dairy company or my end consumer wants to have a production all over the year, cheese, milk, yogurt, or whatever, I need to be able to produce. To be able to produce, I need to provide a good condition for the animals. In that case, could be indoors, outdoors, or whatever. But it's not related to the weather as it is today. What the main driver for this is the production. On a big scale, what is needed is to decide what to do. There are indoor farms in very, very small scale, 100 ewe. There are big farms with 3,000 or 2,000 animals, more or less on hybrid system, indoors, outdoors. So it depends at the end of what I'm going to produce and how I will go. I have to produce it in order to decide the housing system. The milking, well, the milking at the end, as I mentioned at the beginning, is quite important since we are talking about milk production here. There are different systems. We will talk a little bit in details later on. So, but the milking is quite important. Depends also, is related to all the system, how many times per day I will milk my animal, 2, 3, 1, how many hours, many different things. If I have labor force, no, there are a lot of things to take into account. As a summary for this point is, the first and important point is to know the product. And so far, what I have seen during this conference is that you have very clear your market, what they need, what they require, and this is something that is the first time that I have seen on a conference. I have not all over the world on this conference, but more or less I have been in quite few, in different countries. It's the first time that I have seen this kind of big analysis and real deep analysis, and I think it's great. It's amazing because usually when we have this sheep and goat conference, it's more related to feeding, to this animal side part, but in this case, I think you have at least covered this part. You know what you need, and based on that, you have to select the system based on all these points. You have to take into account all these points. Everything is linked, and everything affects the next one, and therefore the investment. And with this information, you will be able to decide what to do. Hybrid, maybe probably what I have seen so far here, you will go between outdoor or hybrid system, which is probably the best solution. The point is that irrespective of what are you going to select, you have to take into account all these points. And also try to think from a different point of view, that there is a reason why we should, or you could see in other countries, a different system, even very close, in close area, geographical area. Okay, as I mentioned before, we are talking about milk. This is dairy farming. Milk is important. Just as a brief history, probably you already know, the first milking machine was developed in Roquefort area in France between the 1930 and 1932 by de Laval and, well, Alpha Laval on that time, and the Robert Fleury, who was the manager of Roquefort Confederation and Association. So this is how is the hand milking on that time, and this is a picture probably from the first lactation, from the first lactation of animal mechanical milk. So this is the first milking machine created. You could see it's bucket, quite mid-line. It was amazing because the milking parameter used on that time is the same that we recommend and we use today. That is something that is always good to recommend. So that was the time that the milking machine started for sheep and goat. For sheep, then for goat started in the 70s, but what happened during all this time with the milking equipment? What has happened? Probably at the beginning was the scope to have a lot of animals on a milking parlor, few milking points, and then we spend a lot of time on the milking parlor. We have no automation. Well, more and more we start to introduce electrical components and so on. What was the next step on that time? To introduce some kind of automation in order to reduce the labor force and to try to avoid some over milking and to improve the animal health and quality of the milk. The next step that we have, I would say we are on that area, is that on that stage, on that situation, that moment is that right now what we need is we have a challenge because more and more the farmers are bigger, or maybe are not necessarily bigger, but they have different demand. They need to have more data, more information. They want to control. They want to have to get all this information during the milking. You have to take into account that during milking there are a lot of information that is taken from the animals. It's most probably the time that we have the opportunity to see the animal, to interact and to check. So it's an opportunity to get information from the animal, and that is what is important to have in mind, because more and more what farmers really would like to have is to have more control of the farm and more control and more information from the animals. But what is, or how we consider a milking system? What is a milking system? Milking system, well, we could say that it's from teat to the tank. It's all devices, components, equipment that help or bring the milk from the teat of the animal, extract the milk, and put it on the cooling tank. But it's more than that, because with this we cover an important part, but it's also about the traffic, how the animals are entering to the stall and how the animals are exiting to the stall. This is making the difference, because comparing to cows, for example, the milking time in sheep is very short. So the dead time or the time that you are not milking is quite important. It's the key values in order to have a good throughput or efficient parlor. I will not get into details on dimension on this. I prefer to go into details on other point that probably is not quite normal to see. I will show you later on how it is possible and the technology, how the technology could help us or help you to understand the throughput and to realize where is the problem without being on the farm. Just if you are traveling or if you are on Europe or in Australia or wherever. So we could have one milking parlor, we could have two milking parlors depending on the size. There are many points to take into account depending on the animal breed, lactation, animal production, labor force, if we have automation, what will be our system, our management system. There are different points to select one type or another size. Could be 4, could be 16, 20, wherever. There is a limit, but that is not an important part itself. If you have a good system, you know how many animals you need to milk, you have all these variables, and you know what you get, it is possible to select, no problem. But once it's selected, when you have decided what to do, the drawing is okay, you have to, of course, you have to do it properly, you have to take into account all these kind of things, is the next step. So you have information. This is, you are monitoring your farm. You have the information, the 3,000 sheep. This is the production per ewe. This is the time. This is per group, incident, everything you have here. And then you could go into detail. But once you have this, is the farm. But what about your parlor? You could see your parlor. Then you say, okay, I need to know how to improve or how to be more efficient with my parlor already installed. I cannot change it, or I don't need to change it. I need to first check this part. And this is farm management part, farmer task. We have 2 milking sessions. We have some number of group, production, sheep per hour, milk yield per hour. This is, in one case, is normal case. But if we have 2 or more farms or 3 milking sessions, we have 2 parlor, 3 milking sessions. This is total hours per day of milking. That is an extreme case, but just to show you the potential. You have all this information here, and you could analyze. Then I will select one case that, in order that you could see with examples and numbers what is happening. So this is the milking performance parlor. This is what the system gives you, because the system could know exactly when the animals are entering to the parlor, when has been leaving the parlor, when you attach, if there is reattachment, what happened during all the milking season. It is possible to know, but then the important with the information is not only to have it, it's also to know and take a decision based on that. If you have any information and you take no decision, it's useless information. So here I want you to show these 2 parts. One is the sheep per hours and milking session. Usually this is the number that people are sharing or are asking for when they say, okay, what type of parlor, what size, how many animals per hour. And you have the session, well, they are different. But there is an important point, and more this is what big, or I would say profitable farm, they are trying to look for. Is the milk yield per hour, which is important. It is really important. Why? Because if you see here, see, number of animals is quite similar, but see the production is double. It is important, the number, the amount of milk per hour, and if we go a step further, per milker. This is the value that you have to, at the end, you will have to compare. In this case, there are 2 milkers, so around 200 liters per milk per hour per milker. This is more or less the throughput. We could say that the highest and the most productive parlor could reach 250 liters in sheep. In goats is different. But this is just an information that you have to take into account. Then, another point, if we go into details, milk yield per hour, okay? What happened here is the same session, 2 days, consecutive days, is the same parlor, probably the same milker or not, we don't know. It's the same animal, everything is the same time. Then 6:55, 6:53 started to milk, it's the same. But why we have here this number? And if we see sheep per hour, 340, 460. Why? There is a difference. It's almost 52 minutes extra. It's money, it's labor force, it's time, if you are the milker, it's your time. Then there is another, this is the system is providing all this information, so if you go into details, We see, okay, what happened? Is the same number of animals? The same. What happened? The reattachment is double. So the milker, in that case, it was quite new, and he believed that some animals need reattachment. So he reattached, but what does it mean? That you delay the batch. Then you have this average milk duration, 2 minutes, close to 3, and this is close to 2. That is the difference. But then you see this manual control means when you detach manually. He reattached, but the milker also realized that it was not needed, and he was forced to detach manually. And for this practice, without increasing the milk production, you lose 1 hour. Only 1 hour. Only for this. And this is management. Of course, you need time to do it, but it is an example where is a point to improve the milking performance. Of course, there are many points, but this is just an example. The last slide, this is another example. This is visual. The color are the groups. In this farm, they have groups. Physically, split all this group, and you see there is no big gap. Of course, there is a gap. It's not possible it's not machine. We know that there should be some daytime animal that could trap or whatever. But what happened here? This is 12 minutes. And then there was a problem. This was somebody reattached. And then all the batch, is 20 animals, were waiting for nothing. You lose, on this one reattach, 12 minutes. And you don't need to go to the farm to see, because you could be connected remotely from computer or from mobile, tablet, or whatever. This is what is happening. So now, more and more, the farmer they do not need to go inside the pit to see the animals. If you have the tool, you could do it. And in that case, you could be efficient with your parlor. And that is the message that you have to take from this session, that it is possible to do a lot of things, but you need correct information and, of course, analyze it. Thank you very much. Yeah.